There's a dirty little secret of most wearable tech, and the dirty little secret is it's not actually wearable. It's strappable, it's mountable. It's not actually something that you wear in any traditional meaning of that word. One startup, Nextiles, is trying to change that. Imagine smart thread woven right into all of your clothing. No straps, no attachments, just clothing and data. To chat more and learn more, I'm talking to the CEO and founder, George Sun. George, welcome.
Hi, nice to meet you, John.
Hey, it is great to have you here. Thank you for taking the time. You've said if it can be sewn, it can be smart. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this actually really boils down to the fundamental principles of how you make a circuit, how you make anything connected, how you make anything communicate data from one end to the next. And that's with just basically connecting from point A to point B. Today, we do that with circuit boards. If you open up your phone or any kind of electronics, you see all these highways of electronics kind of touching each other. And what we're trying to do is take that principle of getting things communicating with one another, but doing that in clothing. So like you have a phone that can do Wi-Fi, acceleration, it can connect to the GPS. We want to do that same principle through threads alone. And so when we say, hey, it could be sewn, it could be smart, we're literally trying to sew the same kind of highway of data streams that you can normally find in a computer chip, but do that in clothing. And we found, and we have patented, both the materials, both the manufacturing method, and the devices that actually make these sensors.
Well, it's really interesting because if you look at traditional circuit boards from, sheesh, I don't know, 20 years ago, you can see the circuits, right? People could even edit them with a soldering iron or
Yep.
something like that. That's no longer anywhere near the case, right? I mean, everything is microscopic, nanoscopic, if that's even a word. So I'm assuming what you're doing is actually probably pretty visible because we can see threads, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it could be a good or a bad thing to make an analogy or comparison to the semiconductor world. But when Moore's law really kicked off formally in the 60s, when we built transistors, like transistors were the size of your everyday computer. But right now, like with Moore's law, we have trillions of them in the size of a fingertip. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. The threads that we're sewing, they're not even on the micron scale. They're about, they're threads. You can see them. But we're just at that cusp of Moore's law. And at Nextiles, one of our theses is to really reinvigorate the innovation in sewing technology, because that has really lagged behind as a platform itself, right? We've only been using clothing just for clothing's sake, but we do see that entire real estate on the body to be advanced. But the reason why that comparison may not be good is that these highways that we're making with these threads on the clothing is actually aesthetically pleasing. We always joke around in the company that it looks like Iron Man. Like right now you can see all the signals kind of like veins kind of powering that suit. So if you do want it, we can actually do customize garments that do have these highways exposed. But they're actually quite unique methodologies where we do cover it, we do hide it. So, it doesn't look too Frankenstein if that's what people are thinking about.
Yeah, how medieval. Hey, clothing that just, protects you from cold or damp or something like that. Absolutely. So talk about what kind of sensors you've been able to sew into clothing or to create within clothing.
Yeah, absolutely. We call this a beachhead. The first, I would say, sensor technology beachhead with the threads we're using, with the fabric that we're using, we call them mechanical sensors. And it's because these threads really lend themselves to, mechanical deformation. Right now, if you twist a circuit board, you're probably going to snap it. But when we sew these things into your fabric, we really want to leverage how flexible they are, so that when you stretch the fabric, when you bend the fabric, when you apply pressure on the fabric, we can actually sense electrical changes. So, not to go too much in the deep end on physics, hopefully it doesn't give anyone PTSD in their high school days, but, when you power a device, you're putting in some voltage, you're putting a little bit of current, but because you're going to stretch the fabric, because you're going to bend it or twist it in a way that's not, away from its normal state, that signal changes, it deforms, it either increases or decreases, and that's what we capture. So we're really not capturing like, hey, 5 or 24 or 36, we're capturing percentages, right? How much did your fabric change? And we map that back to, oh yeah, it changed because you bent your arm 45 degrees. It changed because your torso pivoted, by 4 radians. I don't know, whatever kind of numbers you can make up. But that's what we're mapping, and we do have our sights on other types of sensing modalities, but maybe we can touch on that later in the talk.
That is really, really interesting. I mean, because you've basically got analog flowing into digital and digital flowing into analog in some really real sense. You've got an analog thing that's in my knee or my elbow or my wrist, whatever it might be, that is measuring change, and you're getting digital measurements out of that that are very precise, right? I mean, some percentage, and you could probably go to multiple decimal places on
Mm-hmm.
that. How does that data get out? Where does it go? Do you have some central processor? I mean, I've talked to people in the IoT world, and they've been able to design a Bluetooth chip that lives on like a sticker. And I'm
Yep.
talking super thin. Is that what you're doing? Are you connecting to a smartphone?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I would say the biggest bottleneck that we're facing is actually the electronics themselves. So we have, you can imagine this highway of threads. They're going up and down, beneath, between, different layers of fabric, but they all terminate in an area that we consolidate. So we have all these threads. We consolidate them to maybe an area of the body that's, not usually encountered. And then we actually do stick that sticker, you would say. We actually do incorporate a small battery, a small Bluetooth device. We're leveraging Bluetooth 5, so battery life is about 24 hours or more. And with that Bluetooth device, we do connect with apps. That does dive deeper into our business model of how we want to relay that data. We make our own apps, we make SDKs, we make APIs, but that transformation is really trying to collect all those threads in an area that you don't really normally see, because right now
Mhm.
you did talk about strappables, right? All of that technology is localized on that wrist, right? But for us, we have the freedom and liberty to kind of move that module wherever we want. So we can actually put a sensor on the wrist, but then have that battery and Bluetooth maybe on the base of the arm or on the back of the
Yes,
neck or
yes.
somewhere far off. But to extra confirm what you just said, yes, we do use Bluetooth, we do use apps, and that's how the data is coming to the consumer.
Right. Super interesting. I interviewed Williot, which makes Bluetooth basically in prints Bluetooth chips. And one of them actually harvests ambient radio frequency energy, doesn't have a battery, doesn't live on a battery. I can imagine something like that is in your future, or maybe even something that is just harvesting ambient energy from heat, even from the body, or movement. I'm sure you've looked at that stuff as well. Where's this being used?
Yeah, I would say maybe to touch on your previous comment on the energy harvesting, and not to show all of my cards, but we are looking into piezoelectric materials, and actually that's the materials that we make at Nextiles are these piezoelectric, piezo resistant materials, and what that is I don't know where people would normally see it, but I think it's intuitive that every time you crunch your leg or you do a step,
Mhm.
you're going to make a little bolt of electricity, and that can get stored. And
Yep.
so that's in our horizon, that the more you move your body, the more you can collect that ambient movement energy, the kinetics, back to powering that battery. But to answer that the main question of where this is used, it's pretty much used in performance sports.
Mhm.
I'm putting that adjective there is because we're really targeting athletes at the kind of the higher level, the ones who actually do want to see the data, the ones who actually can discern and understand the data. And the reason why we're doing this is also selfishly for us, is because we're creating so much data that we don't even know how to analyze. I don't mean to degrade myself, but I'm no professional baseball player, right? I'm no
Yep.
professional football player. So even though I'm the one getting the data, I should not be the one to tell you, yeah, that's the best way to throw a 99 mile per hour ball. Like, I should not be
Yep.
giving that feedback to you. So
Yes.
we've been working with people from the MLB. We've been working with people from the NFL, that working with these athletes, they're educating us to understand what do you want from the data, and we can go back, mine that data, or even augment our sensors to actually better capture those data. And so again, to loop this around to answer your question, we've been working hip to hip with professional athletes.
I love that. I love that a lot. Now I'm Canadian from Vancouver, Canada, so I'm a hockey player. So play a lot of hockey, taken a lot of hits, broken a lot of bones, got some cuts and stuff like that. But can you imagine knowing as medical professional, here's exactly how far that limb was torqued out of normal or something like that. That'd be super interesting, in real time, perhaps, to know, hey, it's dangerous for that athlete to continue, or maybe should pull from the game. Or even a baseball player, it's hard to tell sometimes, like a swing that's working or not working. Well, your average is down a little bit over the last 10 days. We've been able to identify that your angle is just down by about 2 degrees. I mean,
Yeah.
something that you would never see visually. Maybe an AI looking at the data could, or something like that, but that is super interesting.
Yeah, and my comment on that is that it's also trying to be humble about the data that we're getting, is that we aren't looking for that silver bullet solution, as in like, yeah, that number is the perfect indicator for injury prevention. For us, we're more on the law of averages of, if you can study over time, if you can wear the device over time, what is that trend in your kind of performance portfolio? Because it may happen that today, you're healthy, but the next 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, we see some degradation. And so to get that kind of precision and this pattern matching, because again, we're really not telling you like, oh, aim for this number, that's the golden number. We're kind of telling you, okay, this is the profile that you want to aim for, right? You don't want to overcommit on squats or push-ups or throws and so on. And so I'm just agreeing to what you said, that if we could, capture this data over time with enough athletes, and that's the thing that we're doing right now, finding that 2 degree angle difference and correlating that to an eventual injury or likelihood of injury, that's something we really want to pursue.
Wow. I can imagine future trades. We want to see the data on over the past 5 years on power and speed. Is this athlete aging or aging well?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And maybe to add in on that too, I know before I was trying to explain the types of sensors we're making, these mechanical sensors, things like forces, pressure, torque. That actually does segue really nicely to what you just alluded to. It does lend itself easily to these higher order calculations, things like angular velocity, things like strain, things like stress, and even things like fatigue, right? The more force you add, I'm assuming that force is expending some calories and you'll get tired after a while. And I can try to predict a future question of why this is different, is that trying to use accelerometers, that's a little bit indirect, right? Yeah. Movement can come from anything. You can be on a bike and it's moving. You can be spinning around and that's moving. But to really measure forces that come from the body, and that's really, really different. And that's what we're trying to garner and collect. Yeah. And forces are definitely more intuitive to understand than telling someone you're moving at 20 meters per second squared, right? So who knows?
Wow, that's quite some acceleration there. I wish I could do that. Yeah. What kind of price are we looking at here? I mean, one of the good things about, let's say, strappables, and I'll hold up my Apple Watch here, is that I buy one of them and I wear it with every outfit. That sucks. If I have sensors in my clothing, then I need them to be in all my clothing items. Now, maybe you're getting around that by being in like an Under Armour type of thing or something like that. But what's the long-term vision there?
Yeah, so right now we are aiming for that Under Armour kind of a platform where it's either a compression garment or a garment you can wear underneath and still have the freedom to wear the clothing you would like. So we do this for the athletes so that they don't have to change their jerseys. It's actually not recognizable. They don't have to combat their the branding per se. So I don't think that's a huge issue. We are machine washable, so if you do want to wear it for one game and then wash it and then wear it for the next one, totally available. But the price point right now, since we are pre-launch, it's actually launching right now with these athletes, but not to the consumer base. I can tell you right now, it's not as expensive as an Apple Watch, but it probably is a little bit more expensive than your I guess your Gap or your Uniqlo T-shirt. So it's kind of in that spectrum. So I do see in the next year and a half that this can be a consumer product where someone says, hey, I can either buy a regular shirt or a Nextile shirt, and that price point won't shock them. Yeah. But right now we're kind of trying to really focus on the athletic space of, yes, it's a rash guard, or yes, or it's a compression shirt. Go wear it with your other uniform, and then go from there. So I don't mean to dance around that bush, but it is definitely is affordable for the athletes we're working with. For the consumer, you may have to wait, until 2022, which is coming up soon, or in the next coming year.
Hmm. Hmm. I was going to ask as well. I mean, obviously, you're into wearable tech. What wearable tech do you personally use?
Yeah, it's I actually use an Apple Watch. They're not paying me to say that, but I've used it in the beginning, and this is just a personal story. I have no agenda for what I'm saying right now. I've tried using the pedometer, the exercise routine, the calorie counts, but it eventually became somewhat of a kind of a nuisance. I know some people create a
Hmm.
habit around it, but I think for me, for it to remind me that I need to walk 10 more steps or I need to stand up for 2 more hours, just given my routine, it was quite difficult to do. So it was a little bit too involved. So I just use it as like a kind of an email sniffer or just checking the time.
Hmm.
Um, I think ideally for me would be like kind of if I were to have a wearable, and let's say a Nextiles wearable, it would be for very surgical application, right? It'll be because I want to train for a marathon, and that's why I want to buy XYZ garment, right?
Hmm.
I not to alienate anyone, but I think right now it's very difficult to make a lifestyle wearable because everyone has different lifestyles. I did hundreds of interviews with consumers, and some people want it for when they're sleeping. Some people want to wear it when they're walking, or some people want to do it when they're walking their dog. But for us, we're trying to be very diligent because the data matters, right? The
Hmm.
data really matters, and I think to do that, you have to fold in this precision of what are you trying to look for what activity. Is it a marathon? Is it a pitch? Is it a quarterback throw? Is it a tackle? And then from there, trying to be diligent of keeping track of it. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's kind of
It
what my
does.
mind
And
is.
it is interesting because a lot of people use wearables as like a general activity measurement thing, as a general health aid. And that's how I use it, right? Am I getting enough exercise? Am I moving enough? Yeah, I'll get up every 50 minutes or so and
Hmm.
run a little bit around my office here. So I have my stand hour in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That sort of thing. But if you're going to work on pure performance, then that's too general. That's too vague. It's not specific enough. I totally see what you're getting on there. Let's look out then. Here's the crystal ball, and you look at Nextiles 3, 4 years down the path, maybe 5 years down the path. What do you see? What's available? What's possible?
Yeah, I that's a really good question. And I think with the support of my team and talking with my team both on a business, philosophical, and technological level, I think we're really seeing ourselves as this kind of this back end infrastructure company where we support technology innovation in existing or new platforms. And I hate to sound cliche or even use another company, but the concept of Nextiles inside or powered by
Mhm,
Nextiles,
mhm.
much like Intel inside. You have this universal chip company powering most of our devices. But for a consumer, it's not that key focal point. They're still buying an Apple computer, they're still buying a HP Dell computer, but really the core of it is that chip you're buying, and we want to be that chip. Not a chip per se; it's fabric, but hopefully that made
I get the
sense.
point.
So the next even in the next coming year, we will love partnerships. We will love to open our doors to to manufacturers, to OEMs, to those who want to kind of pivot their product into the wearable space. Because not only can we make garments for the Under Armours out there, for the Nikes out there, we can also do this for things like carpentry. We can also do these for vehicles if you want to put technology into the car seat. So I think there's a huge spectrum that we want to tackle, but obviously, I think you kind of get this now that we tried boiling the ocean, that didn't work, and so we're being really precise by working with these athletes, working with these institutions.
Nice, nice, nice. I think we have to update Intel Inside to like ARM Inside or something like
Yes,
that, given
yeah,
that ARM processors have conquered everything. But maybe it's Nextiles underneath. I don't know.
yeah. Actually, trademark, but yeah.
There you go. There you go. Who do you see as a major competitor in the space of smart clothing, smart threads?
Yeah, I think without calling them out by name, because I think right now when it comes to smart fabrics, we're all in the startup world. I don't think
Mhm.
there's like an Apple analogy in the smart fabrics world. So I think we're all very kind of at the starting line trying to race each other. But most of the companies that I've seen who are competitors to us, and I hopefully that competition is cordial, are companies who do conductive inks. So that's a little bit different, right? Conductive inks are, you can kind of imagine like screen printing, right? When you put a logo on your t-shirt, kind of like this, you screen print it on. But you can imagine these logos being, conductive copper, silver, whatever. We don't primarily do that. There's a few reasons why we don't use conductive inks. It's a huge chemical process on its own. Like that entails, laboratory scale to liquefy metal and to have it be heat pressable and, to make sure it doesn't leak or diffuse to the manufacturer. And more so, I think just sewing is just a more mature technology. As of now, yeah, you can call me out and say, yeah, George, can you make 10 million of these? Yeah, I can't. But if you were to tell me, can you make 10 million shirts using sewing? I could say yes. We do this. We do this every day. Sewing. My mom knows how to sew. People in the U.S., from U.S. to China to Mexico, they know how to sew. But if you told them to hold a liquid vat of metal and tell them to screen print something, I think that takes another learning curve. So we're really trying to leverage mature technology. I think the story behind it makes us very happy, because we do want to reinvigorate this industry, which actually originated in the U.S., right? That's why I'm in New York, the garment district, the textile district. So our competitors are those who like to use exotic chemistries. And I think our competitors as well, another competitor bucket, are those who like to further miniaturize their sensors. So they're still using, the accelerometers, they're still using the small Bluetooth chips that you're talking about. They're not in the form factor of fabric, but they're so small that they're encompassing it around the body. And we'll see how far that technology goes. I think we hinted at Moore's law. I mean, it can't go on forever, but we'll see.
Interesting. Maybe one personal question to end off. How did you end up in this space? Why are you interested in wearable technology, and how did you become, why did you become a founder of a wearable tech company?
Yeah, hopefully I don't give you a novella of my life. Stop me if I'm rambling.
I totally will. You got like 90 seconds.
Okay. Well, when I was studying, I was highly academic. I was highly theoretical when I studied, from my bachelor's to my PhD. Most of my work was in chemistry, material science, electronics. I dealt with books. I didn't deal with people. But it wasn't until I did, these competitions, there were hackathons to pitch events to finally being recognized with a few publications, that I had a work experience at Puma. And that was very eye-opening for me to see the theory that I was cultivating for the past, 10 years of my life being accelerated to a 6 to 10 month project, right? Take all that knowledge you have in your brain and try to make a product out of it. And I think doing that was very exciting. It showed me, it proved to me that products can be made with new tech. And even more so, I think my ambitions for the wearable technology was actually history, was to see how history kind of didn't go to me personally, didn't go the right way of we made these semiconductors, which are huge. Let's make them really, really small, and let's put them on our body, which to me historically just feels really weird, right? It should be, we make clothing, we like clothing, it feels really, really nice. Let's make the clothing smart. So I kind of wanted to flip the industry upside down, and maybe it was a combination of arrogance and confidence and having a great support group. I work with amazing people that I started this company.
Wonderful. Well, no startups would get started if people didn't have, if we weren't blind to certain things and arrogant about some things and hoping against hope that we could be successful. So congratulations on that. And thank you for taking this time.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the time as well.